Right, it's after CitizenCon day one. I'm exhausted, but I want to just give some thoughts on the Squadron demo. So we're going to rattle through some of the good things, some of the maybe concerning things. Let's get into it. Now, visually, I think it looks unreal. Some of this is really improved since last year. This kind of spacescaping, the volumetric cloud stuff maybe in the background, all the cloud gas cloud stuff. It looks incredible, and it's a bit of a theme, I think, from my point of view, that it just looks stunning all the way through. The battle looks stunning. The kind of actors, it is impressive. I mean, as we go through this, I'm not completely impressed with everything, but from a visual side of things, I think they've absolutely smashed it. And I mean, I'm really struggling to think of a game that looks this good. I mean, maybe I'm being slightly over the top there, but it really is pretty impressive. Now, obviously, we go over some stuff that we saw last year, but then we're actually now walking around the ship. And I think for people who aren't aware of this whole project, aren't aware of Squadron Force 2, they won't necessarily realise that all of the ships that they can see there are completely modelled out and you can just wander around them. So this obviously, if you follow Star Citizen, this is kind of this is what we do every day, but it is very cool. You can see coming up here some of the kind of conversational tech that you've seen worked on in monthly reports for ages, how they kind of both look at you and focus in on you. I mean, it's quite seamless. It's pretty smooth. That's pretty good, I think. And so that sort of stuff is nice. And in general, the sort of chatter, it's not super awkward. One of my fears coming into this is that it's all the kind of writing, is the story or the character's going to be a little bit kind of video gamey and a bit kind of cringy. But it can kind of pull it off. And we'll talk about why one of those reasons is in a minute. But I think on the whole, they've done a pretty good job with setting the scene, the theme of kind of of being on board, being part of a crew. I mean, he's obviously walking around really quite slowly here, but the vibe that it's kind of building, I think, is pretty good. Now, the first thing that I kind of wasn't completely sure about, we obviously get up to the turret, and the whole purpose of this prologue here is to serve as a kind of tutorial. How do you play the game? What are the mechanics? What are the controls? But I've got some big issues with this section that's coming up here. For one, does anybody really need to know how to work a turret? Is it complicated? Do you not just click and shoot? I think it's fairly straightforward. And the amount of time that we spend shooting ships in this turret, I think, is way overkill. There's nothing to learn here. This doesn't require a tutorial. And another thing would be that the enemies. Now this could open up a whole can of worms, but whether it's the whole master modes thing, I don't know. I don't know what exactly. I know that they've slowed combat down partially for Squadron Force 2 to make it more enjoyable. But the speed in which some of these ships move is kind of ridiculous, I think. They're just moving so slowly. It's like they're just kind of wanting to be shot down. Like they've just given up. The Vandal life isn't for them, and they've had enough. And I know obviously this is the first part of the game. This is a tutorial, but for me, it just looks very kind of lacking in any sort of challenge or kind of speed. Look at them; they're just sitting there waiting to be shot, and I don't see why they can't just fly past and you hit them again. There's no rush. You can take them down over multiple kind of passes that they do. But this isn't kind of fun looking to me. Maybe it's controversial. And then one of the things I am aware of is that this game is being driven primarily by a man in his 50s, Chris Roberts, and that's not to insult him or anybody who's in their 50s, but I do think there's a sense in which they want this game to be playable for everybody and anybody. Obviously, the people who have backed this game are all sorts of ages and stages and whatever. And so it looks as though they've not wanted to create some sort of really fast, kind of Twitch-based shooting experience in this turret. But all that said, I just think they should speed it up a little bit, speed the combat up. We also have this section where you're taking down these heavier, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what ship these are, but there's a lot of firing going on before anything happens. And there's another section coming up where you're shooting down some turrets, and it's bizarre. Some of the enemies, some of the FPS enemies, we will come on to in a bit, feel quite kind of squishy and quite easy to kill. And some of these things, I think, you're just repeatedly hitting them. The ships, I think the time to kill still looks about right. It looks about right, but some of the repeatedly shooting turrets on enemy ships in order to destroy them, I don't know. It looks like your weapon doesn't really have any kind of power. I mean, the thing that's worth saying is that this is, as we come on to the end, going to be released in theory in 2026, and so there's plenty of time for them to rebalance this stuff. But it didn't look fun. But again, worth saying, sitting there watching it is not the same as playing it, and so there is a chance that playing it feels more kind of engaging than it looks. Some of it just looks a little bit like you're just slugging away against some of these targets, and it I don't know. We should cover just the amount of cinematics going on here as well. A good chunk of this whole demo was not part where you were playing as the character. You were watching, and it's absolutely incredibly good looking. It's stunning. The acting is great. All of what we're seeing, I think, from a visual side, but as what you're watching, is unbelievable. But considering this is your first experience in the game, you're not doing much. You're doing a lot of watching. Maybe that's okay, and maybe this is going to be one of those games where you feel very much like you're in some sort of interactive movie. I'm sure there'll be sections where there's much more. I mean, and again, this is just the first part of the game, but this is a long intro and a long prologue, and yeah, I don't know if everybody who plays this game will like just watching quite so much. But whilst we're here talking about the actors, the fact that they've obviously spent a fair bit of money, I assume, on getting A-list actors, like really, Gary Oldman's maybe he could be classed as one of the best actors in the world. His kind of range of what he can do. All of these guys really are top notch, and there's obviously in the past been a lot of kind of hoo-ha about the fact that they will have spent a lot of money on getting these guys in, but their performances, I do think, pay off. Like, you are engaged in this. They're good actors, and it does come through. I mean, in the UK, I don't know wherever you are in the world, in the UK, sometimes when you're watching kind of UK TV programs, they're just a bit rubbish, and it's partially because the actors just aren't very good. They probably didn't have the budget to pay for really good actors, so they just got some random people, and it kind of shows in the show. But this, on the other hand, it does feel pretty classy. Maybe it doesn't feel like some sort of terrible computer game where all of the kind of acting and everything is awful. There is a level of, I'll go with classiness to it. Vandal. One of these, I guess, is maybe not one of these guys, but somebody might be Andy Serkis. They look good, the Vandal. They look quite scary, but we'll come on to it in a minute. I got an issue a little bit with the FPS stuff. Now, after what felt like a long time, we actually get back to ourselves, our character, and we're in this FPS section. And there's an element here where they're kind of playing this all quite slowly, and that he's kind of cinematically kind of walking around and stuff, whereas I think if I was playing this, I'd be kind of rushing to get through this. But this section is quite long. Again, unreal visually, like really, really impressive. And it kind of shows you some of the different mechanics. And I've got no issue really with anything that we saw here. I think it all looks good. And I think one of the kind of under the radar things that's happened with Star Citizen over the last few years is that whilst it's still definitely not perfect, the FPS side of things has improved, and this, I think, shows it. It looks pretty solid. Even the gunplay looks relatively decent, as we come on to that in a minute. But we'll go through this section basically showing mechanics, crouching here to get through these different sections, all sorts of stuff, quick time events, puzzles that we see. All of it looks pretty good. Visually, again, good. I'd love to know if this is using the global illumination stuff that they talked about. Here's an interesting thing that we're watching here. This Vandal looks very scary, partially because that guy's had an absolute shocker with his gun. He has full on blood there. That guy shoots him in the face. They look quite, and they're meant to, obviously. You don't want to come up against one in a corridor like this. But we get to this encounter here, and they not quite for it. It does take you down. Nice block here. Not everybody's going to love that, but that's fine. So this encounter feels quite like threatening, like he's actually a big issue, but it hasn't taken that many bullets to the chest. Now, I'm relatively decent at FPS games. I wouldn't be aiming there for his chest. I would be doing headshots, which I assume they'll take more damage. So here's the other section where they attack. We'll come back to the things we've missed in a minute, but the movement here is quite threatening, but we've got 45 bullets in this magazine, and it's not taking a full magazine to take it down. Now, the fact that he has run out of bullets is a problem, but he's been taken out by our friend Gillian there. They obviously rush you fairly quickly, and again, this is the tutorial, so they're not going to want you to just die repeatedly, so she's probably slightly overpowered there, but I don't know. I personally might prefer some sort of, you need to use a gun that delivers more damage. I mean, the fact that they are kind of duking from side to side there is good. They get quite close, so I guess it feels like they're going to get you, but ultimately, I don't know if they carry the weight, the kind of scare. I'd want to be really scared of them, and the fact that I can just, with a single magazine, or not even a full magazine, just take them out. They look a little bit, they're kind of swarming you rather than being like really threatening boss enemies on their own. Like there needs a kind of crowd of them to actually be threatening, which that wasn't my understanding of this Vandal from what we've seen in the past and the kind of lore stuff. This section though is incredible. We'll talk about the actual zero-G stuff in a minute, but as a kind of visual piece of cinema, look at this, ships going past. It's amazing. And there are multiple in this whole demo. There's multiple sections where you just kind of a bit blown away. They really pulled out all the stops to make this first, I guess, hour of the game pretty stunning. And I think, yeah, we're seeing some of the zero-G push-pull stuff here. That's really cool. I think there's a chance that people will wonder if this is more on rails. I assume it isn't on rails, but I assume if you chose to, you could just take multiple different routes here. But it is cool. It does look good, and people might not be aware. Again, if you're not kind of used to following the project statuses and the zero-G stuff, the fact that we can just float around in zero-G normally, it gets quite normal to us. But this is pretty stunning. But yeah. Quite a long section though this, if you I won't play it all, but the amount of time it takes to get from this bit where you're out in space back into the ship. But look at this graphics, unreal. It really does look stunning, and I think that will take this game quite a long way. The visuals, I don't think the rest of the game will be as kind of cinematic heavy as this first battle, but I mean, I'd still probably want to play it even if it was, because it is something else to look at. And then as we kind of watch this teaser bit that they showed us at the end, one concern I might have is that the first battle is so kind of outrageous and incredible that then as they show you the rest of the game, the tempo obviously slows a bit. It slows right down. You move to this other ship, and you end up, I don't think you're then fighting all the Vandal, you're then doing kind of smaller missions around. Here you go, the UE Stanton or whatever it's called. There's the Morrow Tour again for anybody who remembers. But the pace of the game looks like it will slow down a bit. I guess the idea now is to train you up how to actually fly, because at this point you've actually not really flown. You've not flown any of the smaller ships, the fighters. But will the game then crescendo back up to something as big as that first battle? I haven't read any of the leaks for the game. I'm sure it will. But as you kind of watch through these different clips of the game, I mean, I want to play it. I definitely look at it and think, again, visually unbelievable. I want, probably more than anything, the story. I want to know where this story goes. We have this first battle with the Vandal. Our character survives that. We then effectively go to train in a bit of a kind of out back place where there's not really much going on, but you end up going on these other missions that are not massive space battles, but still, I definitely want to play them. Yeah, it's pretty stunning, visually stunning, gameplay problems, but 2026, quite a way away. Not what I was expecting. I was expecting something a bit sooner, but let me know what you think. I've waffled on a bit there. I'm very tired. I'm going to go to sleep now.